Much of the recent work on the DY site has been about those things that the scholars who have read a lot of Faulkner find useful. But I'd like to spend a bit of time demonstrating how those same features could be useful to, for example, a teacher who only has time to give students a single Faulkner story, such as Dry September. You can access the primary map for Dry September on the DY site here. You'll find the cover for Dry September on the bookshelf on the main site page, which I've surrounded in red. When you click on that link, you'll find the site map, which is stuffed with information about the story's characters, events, and locations, and which offers a lot of ways to put those pieces in conversation with one another. You'll also find wonderful secondary materials, including manuscript images and related audio clips from Faulkner's stint at the University of Virginia. But as I think about these scholarly riches, I also think of one of my recurring nightmares as a teacher, that a student will come to me after reading a story like Dry September and say, "We talked about the story in class, but I don't see any mention of lynching anywhere in the story." In today's world, much of the way people build meaning is by skimming for key terms, rather than for propositions or arguments, much less nuance or euphemism. In many of his stories, Faulkner does not offer the legal term lynching that triggers recognition in a modern reader. And his texts elude the modern text search function on which both students and indeed researchers have come to rely. The term lynch does not appear anywhere in the story Dry September. Compare that with Richard Wright's Uncle Tom's Children, also published in the 1930s, in which lynching is named repeatedly, bursting out of characters' mouths with alarming frequency, as they name the threat that shapes their actions at every turn. Since the term lynch does not appear anywhere in Faulkner's Dry September, how might we address both problems raised by that absence? The students need to see where the story points to lynching without resorting to a dreaded plot summary. And also the further question, why doesn't Faulkner just say it? Here, I think we have a chance to show students where and how scholars build interpretive work using the keywords that have been created by the DY team and that you can access at the top of the DY homepage under Search and Events. To show a student where Faulkner's characters discuss what they're doing without using the term lynching, you can flip back a few pages in the story, but you can also see where the DY team has flagged lynching as a focus. Those of you who are familiar with Library of Congress subject headings will laugh. Yes, this is something of a high-tech return to search options that are cultivated by people with expertise in this area. For our students, however, such an idea is a novelty. Your university's default for their library is probably a Google-like search bar. But a library is not a bad comparison for what DY offers. DY keywords help cultivate, direct, and organize the interests of its users, rather than offer shortcuts or replacements for Faulkner. If you select Dry September from the text list under the search function and put lynch in the keyword search, you'll find 3 places where the team has flagged lynching as a subject. Although lynching as a theme permeates the text, we want to teach students where and how such themes emerge. Here, the DY database points us back to 3 specific moments in the text marked by the page numbers and the first few words of the event on that page. Breaking it down into more manageable pieces, the site yet still forces readers to go back to the text. If we look up the 3 moments indicated by the search results, we get these references to lynching. When we put these articulations of their action alongside one another, we see the blatant obfuscation of the character's true actions. "We're just going to talk to him a little, that's all," expressed by men who had earlier dismissed any need for talk. Then the violence is ritualized. "It can't be done here." And finally, the narrative circles back to the event after it occurs, confirming the lynching through the absence of the man, one of Faulkner's many math games. There's great critical work on this story, but I'm focusing primarily on the way that readers may encounter this text for the first time, and then the means by which we can return to it, looking again, building a case for a new understanding of where and how lynching emerges within the narrative. Even if we establish a textual foundation for the subject of lynching in the story. Now that we've done that, from these 3 instances, we still have to grapple with the sliding references by the characters and the silence of the narrator on this front. Why doesn't he just say it explicitly? We would search in vain for the term lynching in this text, but after helping students see where the characters and the narrator glance off the subject, we might then productively investigate how Faulkner's indirect language redirects our attention from the act of lynching to the development of the lynch mob itself. Even if you only read Dry September with your students, you could draw on the DY site and its wealth of keywords to develop a more robust body of evidence about the kind of language that Faulkner's characters use for lynching, adding to the 3 places highlighted in Dry September. We return to the search page and leave the text option blank so that it will search all the text in our database. You will get a lengthy list of places where our editors have highlighted lynching within his fictions. Rather than think of it as an exhaustive list, consider instead that it's where lynching rose to the surface of the reading, where the seemingly ever-present threat of lynching newly shapes action or feeling in a given scene. Your results page will get lengthy, something like this. If you or your students, however, hunt up some of these references within the books themselves, we'll get something of a linguistic history of lynching in Faulkner. Here are a few of the references I chased down. In Pantaloon and Black, the short story, there is the complete elision of the event. After it was over, it didn't take long. They found the prisoner on the following day. In the novel Sanctuary, we see the self-justification and an explicit link between rape and the burning alive of a man and the preservation of white women. In Light in August, Faulkner lingers on the mood, excitement, before telling us that it's a lynching, so that the social role of the event is clear, no matter what our horror as readers. And then in Intruder in the Dust, we see the anticipation of a lynching that will attempt to reduce Lucas Beecham to a category that the white characters can stand. Although I am, as a teacher, generally perfectly happy to simply lock my students in a room with a book, any text, Digital Yoknapatawpha offers me tools that help me better show my students where major issues appear, how and why scholars weigh the evidence of a given text, and how an author like Faulkner redirects our attention from the horror of the event to the cultivation of a mob mentality within a community. On the DY site, we already have several resources mapping out intertextual relations between A Rose for Emily, As I Lay Dying, The Sound and the Fury, Absalom, Absalom, and more. There are a lot of ways the site is fruitful for both effective teaching of a single text and for pointing beyond that text to Faulkner's work as a whole and life in Mississippi and elsewhere outside his fiction.